Okay. The first poem, I don't think I read it last time, but if I did read it last time, I read badly, so I'll endure it again. It's called An Elegy for One and Many, and it was written about 5 years ago during the time of the 2018 midterm elections, when the news and the political ads were all about migrant caravans ascending on the southern border, and then mail bombs being sent to prominent Democrats. And finally, there was the massacre in the Pittsburgh synagogue. And during this time, I learned of what to me was the sudden and unexpected death of a friend, and who was married to a good friend of mine as well. And he had told me how they met at a folk dancing group in New York City, got married, and then went to the Balkans after they were married to participate in various folk dancing festivals and so forth that were held there. So that's the imagery in the poem. So first one is Elegy for One and Many. The heat broke in the early innings of October. Fall turned dreary, cold, and wet. Untended leaves lay cereal soggy as when poured. We drowned in discord with a threat unsettled weather loomed in days ahead, blaring from the news that TV voices read. The news of sudden illness and approaching death exploded like a mail bomb shoved inside the private entry slot through which we are addressed. An unexpected shock astride mass murder in a synagogue that pains more than the scale and circumstance explains. I mourn the loss and shuffle memories. The voice that will not answer when I call. The time in Minnewaska when we walked to where the raptors soar, heard the falls cascade the rocks and plunge into a wasting lake below. Those memories that are lasting. She was married to a friend of mine who told me how they'd met and danced beside the Adriatic in the afternoon while Tito's shadow faded into night. A land turned inside out by unleashed pit bulls barking tribal zeal that only muted strength would bring to heal. We celebrated when the century turned to 21, a third millennium since the birth of Christ, without the peace the angels once proclaimed. We've grown numb to word of killing fields, both near and far away, that interrupts the humdrum day to day. The news from Pittsburgh soon will fade away, be buried neath an avalanche of scandal and unmuted voices barking tribal zeal. The spark to saturated tinder, hard to kindle for too long, for strangers who we only met through TV voices channeling our lament. A single death will linger when it's mirrored on a friend's face, in unexpected absence, or abrupt end to a young girl's diary. Mass death decays into its individual essence. It becomes the molecules that form the chain that our collective memory maintains. It uncoils into strands of names, the markers we reprint, lest we forget what inhumanity our untamed nature bears when prejudice is passed from next to next and dropped into a well of discontent that bubbles in the anger that unmuted voices vent. The second one is written at the same time, written about 5 years ago, a little bit more. It's called Newtown Plus 5. It was written a couple of weeks after hearing of the 5th anniversary of the Sandy Hook school shooting and about a month before the Parkland school massacre was to follow. They'd be 11 now, attending middle school and blooming in the springtime of their age. They'd be alive to currents coursing through their veins and hatching dreams of what one day might bring. We grieve for them that dreadful day when terror came and stole away the precious years ahead. We bowed our heads, shed a tear, and offered up our thoughts and prayers. It happened just 2 weeks before the visit from St. Nick. Some presents were already wrapped and hidden in a closet, safe from prying eyes that couldn't wait for what the future was to bring. Some kids were hiding in the closet in the school that dreadful day when terror came and stole away the lives their teachers tried to shield, but lost instead the precious years ahead. With only thoughts and prayers to turn, the dreidel wouldn't spin. The thoughts and prayers beneath the tree were all there were to give in the place beneath where a presence should have been. We felt the shock the parents felt and sensed the loss they had to bear. We think of them these 5 years on as holidays draw near, the candles that would still be lit, the gifts that are not there. Once again, we think of them and offer up a prayer. And what of him who did the deed, to whom no thoughts or prayers were paid? What infection in the air could trigger this disease? What madness puts a soldier's gun into such troubled hands? What thoughts and prayers could salve the wound that led to his despair? It's harder on a cloudy day to see the shadow that we cast than it is to pause and say, our thoughts and prayers go out to them as we continue on our way. They'd be 11 now, the tender age of in-between belief in Santa Claus and those beliefs the church and state instill. They'd be in middle school where they would learn the myths of Greece and Rome and history of the USA. And when another shock occurs, they'd be old enough by now to offer us their thoughts and prayers. Thank you.
Thank